Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, October 13th, Radnor Township School District Virtual Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to get right underway. We're going to welcome Steve Norsini. He is the Township Engineer. Steve, is that your technical title?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, from Radnor Township. And welcome Ms. Deco and fellow committee members. Ms. Deco, do you have any administrative remarks before we get underway?
I do. Thank you, Ms. Stern. I just wanted to let all of the committee members know that now that the health and safety plan has been approved, administration is looking to have all supplementals associated with sports and activities on the board agenda for October for approval. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. That's good to hear. I know parents are anxiously waiting to hear that we're going to be officially moving forward with that. So that's great. Let's see, Mr. Batchelor, do we have any public comment?
No, it doesn't look like there's any public comment at this point. I'm just texting now with others. Doesn't look like we have any for this committee right now. And
Okay.
and that approval of those supplementals has not slowed down the start of any of the programs as well, but it will be a ratification for next month based on our discussion from our last month.
Right, thank you. Okay, so fellow committee members, did everyone have an opportunity to look at the minutes from the September 15th meeting? Are we good with those minutes? Okay, so we'll move those forward as approved. And next up, we have our agenda items. These are our monthly action items that we can expect to see on the board. On the board agenda, we'll have our monthly financial reports for the month of September. We will be accepting a donation of some organizers at Ithan Elementary valued at $100. And the one item that I would like to point out is that we will be asked to accept a grant of $416,825.38. This is money that has been authorized through the CARES Act. Delaware County Council was given a block of money. I think it was a total of $60 or $80 million, but they decided to take $20 million of that money and direct it towards school districts in Delaware County who desperately need the money for expenses associated with the COVID pandemic. And so through the allocation that was made, the formula was based on Title I schools, correct, Ms. Deco?
That's correct. It was
Right.
The allocation was based on the number of Title I eligible students that each district had.
Right. So we will be asked to accept, and I think we will gratefully do so, accept $416,000 and $825.38. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments about that. The attached sheet starts to go over the many things that we can use the money for. I know there'll be a careful accounting and auditing of that process through. The Delaware County Intermediate Unit is going to be administering that money, correct, Ms. Deco?
That's correct. And they're going to follow the same guidelines as they do with the distribution for the IDEA funds. So what we're actually approving is the agreement. We've already submitted the budget, and once the agreement is approved, then I will submit for reimbursement.
Okay. Do we have any questions about that? Bradley, Nancy, Sarah?
Just a quick one, because I know we talked about this a lot last spring when we first went virtual and students had to work from home. And I remember one of our first priorities was to figure out how to get internet connectivity for some of our students who might not have that at home. And I noticed that that was actually the first requirement here, that even though it's not the first one listed, it says you have to spend that money first before you can spend anything else. I just wanted a quick update to make sure that we've done all that. I think I've heard that we have, but I just wanted to make sure, brought it to the top of mind again.
So this grant, Sarah, wants you to concentrate on the internet activity. One of the issues with this grant is the money needs to be spent by December 31st. So it's a short timeline. So I worked with Dr. Hand. He has done some upgrades. The bulk of the $415,000 is related to internet connectivity. And then there's some iPads that we purchased and a few other small items. So we did make that our priority when we did the budget and put it together.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
very much.
Well, again, as I said, we're grateful to County Council. I know they're actually considering allocating some additional funds. I hope that they can find way to do that, because it certainly is, every dollar is going to be put to use, as we all know. Okay, great. So that will be on our board agenda at the end of October. The next item is item 4.2, the Matsonford Road Bridge. So just anecdotally, we have Mr. Norsini here to answer questions. I realized when we were putting this agenda together and over the weekend that two of our board members, you joined the board after we had, some discussions about this and after it was kind of brought to light. But basically, if you remember a few years ago, the Matsonford Road Bridge was under tarping and had some significant work done. It was closed for a period of months. And as per an agreement that we have between Radnor Township, the school district, and a third party that allowed for Radnor Elementary School to be built in the early 2000s, there's an ongoing agreement for that area, for the property in which the school sits and the bridge, and maintenance and repair of that bridge is one component of our agreement. And so this what we're being asked to do tonight is to recommend to the board authorizing a payment for repair work that was done on the bridge a couple of years ago. And so, Mr. Norsini, do you want to give us some more background on that? And welcome. Thank you again for coming.
No, thank you for having me. So, as Ms. Stern did note, there is a tri-party agreement that notes, just to go back, the township shall maintain and repair the pedestrian bridge in accordance with all applicable laws. The cost of construction, maintenance, and repair shall be shared equally by the district and the township. The pedestrian, and I'm paraphrasing, the pedestrian bridge shall be owned by the township. So it was brought to our attention that there was some work that needed to be done to the bridge. Specifically, it looked like painting at the time. So in November of 2017, Radnor Township entered into a contract with Gannett Fleming. Gannett Fleming is one of our appointed engineering firms. They're sizable. They do bridge work, dam work, amongst other things. So we didn't want to go out to bid for a project that we didn't know what we had to do, right? So we had this feasibility study done, and from that became the basis for the bid package for the work that had to be done. And Mr. Batchelor may remember when we were going back and forth, I provided that report to the school district. So aside from some structural work that had to be done at the bearing plates, really painting was the largest thing. Now, what caused an increase in cost to this was the fact that there was a substance in the paint that was over the acceptable level of today's standards, which required quite a bit of work. As Ms. Stern noted, the bridge was totally encased. There was air monitoring. The paint that was removed had to be sent out for testing, a lot of good things. But in the end, the bridge was stripped and painted. The structural work was taken care of. There was a lot of masonry pointing that needed to be done to the bridge. So at one point, by resolution 208-97, that was our first payment. I'm sorry, let me back up. So the project was publicly bid. So Radnor Township, we fall under the same requirements as the district. We use PenBid. It's an e-bidding site. So we advertise the project in the newspaper. It's advertised on PenBid. It's a very good system. I'm not sure if the school district uses it. So we put this out for sealed bid. We did get one bidder, and that bidder was at a price of $568,331.28. Now that's the final cost. We did have 3 change orders. There was additional pointing that had to be done. And when we got underneath and we started doing some of the structural work, there was additional structural work to be done. So the total cost was $568,331.28. So I had sent a letter to Mr. Batchelor in October of 2019 outlining these costs, and I noted the district share. So the district share for construction based on the tri-party agreement at 50% is $284,165.64. I go on further in that letter and I know, please note this does not include the design, special inspection, contract administration, and general inspections of the project, we will forward that on. So in talking to Michelle today, I guess what we're talking about tonight is the construction cost, the roughly $285,000. There is an additional $86,000 for the cost of the feasibility study, the design, the construction administration, inspections, special inspections, and all that. That total an additional $86,000, that being the school district share. But the district doesn't have that backup at this time. I will get that provided to the district this week. So the main thing I guess we're talking about tonight is the share of $284,165.64. The bridge has been completed for about over a year now, well over a year. I think it turned out quite nicely and should last us for some time. And just to remind everybody, the bridge was about 18 years old when we did this work. So I don't think that's what we spent for that period of time isn't outrageous, right? The fact that the bridge was there for 18 years, bridges need work, things rust, paint only lasts so long. And that was the crux of this project. So I don't know if that thumbnail version was any help. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Norsini. I appreciate that. I think what I'd like to do is turn the questions over to committee members. And, I remember following it intimately, being on the board both before and after 2017. So does Nancy, Bradley, Sarah, do any of you have any questions for Mr. Norsini?
I just have one question to start is before Mr. Norsini goes, does the administration have any comment on this as well? Or is that something we'll turn to after Mr. Norsini takes question?
When you say the administration, the Radnor Township administration?
I meant the school district administration.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, so Mr. Batchelor, Ms. Deco, anything to add before we do Q&A?
Yeah, we could certainly add something after we discuss with Steve. We can certainly jump in.
So I had a question. I was on the board when this came through last time, and I remember it was particularly contentious. I guess I'm a little surprised at the change. I remember being told it was $300,000 and it's now up to $370,000 or more. Is that solely because of the change orders that had to be added? What's the difference?
No, so the change orders were relatively minimal. It was minimal in the scope of the project. It was $14,000. So, like I say, in my letter to Mr. Batchelor, the total construction costs only were $568,000, which would be a $284,000 split. I further went on to note that there was design costs, and I'll go back. If you recall, we did have a feasibility study done. That was worth its weight in gold because that was what the project was bid off of. So the total investigative, exploratory, feasibility study, bidding documents, as well as special inspections, that totaled, now this is above the construction costs. So that was $56,000, which when you look at a project of this size, that means that all that engineering was roughly 10%. And that falls well within standards for a project like this. Actually, I think it's a little bit on the low side. The inspections were $30,000. That's all in. So they aren't the special inspections. That was our other appointed inspection firm that we use to do the general site inspections. So the split on those things, so actually I should back up. So the total engineering was about 20%. Our share is 10%, your share is 10%. That's still, this is a very specialized project. It's not like we're designing a road or something like that. If you saw, the district does have the bidding documents. The specifications on the paint removal alone were volumes in this. And again, we used QCI to keep the cost down on those special inspections. We used our appointed inspection firm to do the daily inspections to make sure that, traffic wasn't being affected. The more mundane repairs were inspected by them. We have a 2-year contract with them. So just so the board knows, both these firms, Gannett Fleming and QCI, were chosen through an RFP process, a request for proposal process. So the township, we don't just pull these folks out of a hat. I created RFPs for both these, for several contracts, but for these two, they went through a staff review, they went to our board, and they were awarded that. So we think we get the best value from them. But that's the big, long story short, the big change is the additional $86,000 to the district is their share of that feasibility study and all that good stuff.
So, and I, look, I know you're relatively new in your role, so please don't take any of these questions personally. But the letter that came to the district last year, you're right, it did have that disclaimer. Was it that just that I would have thought the feasibility study was done first, so that cost would have been already known and could have been reported to the district?
You are correct. We did that feasibility study well before, and we did the design and construction administration contract with Gannett Fleming. What I didn't want to do was keep sending bills to the district of, we've got this. So we waited till all the QCI bills were in, all the Gannett Fleming bills were in, because the way we work our contracts on design, they're really a not to exceed. So if for some reason we don't need their services as much, it'll be below that. If for some reason something came up, we would do a change order. So it was really just to let all those come in. They did come in. At that point, I don't know that there was a lot of flavor on the school district board to really address this. So we let it sit for a bit. And that's, for no particular reason, but we did let it sit. And we're very, very thankful that you folks are entertaining this tonight. So in speaking to Michelle, thought, hey, you have the backup and all the information you need for the construction costs. Our finance department, I will provide through our finance department all the other information the district needs for the inspections and design and feasibility. And hopefully we could address that at a future finance committee meeting.
Okay. And again, nothing personal. It would be really helpful in the future if we got all the numbers at once. And I know you were still compiling things, but what happens is, especially when you have changes on the board, people go, wait a minute, didn't we pay this already? Wait a minute, why is this coming up again? And the public sees that too. And they say, why am I seeing this on the agenda again? I thought these things were paid. I think it's a little bit different because it's all the same taxpayer base, right? It's just coming from one pocket or the other. But I think people just generally want to see it all at once. So that would be helpful in the future.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming to explain this to us this evening.
Bradley or Nancy, do you have questions?
I just have, again, coming into it relatively late, I just have a question regarding future maintenance. I don't know if your feasibility study addressed any future work that needs to be done. I question, what may have to be done in the future. And then I know we've done our own feasibility study within the district and was wondering whether this is a piece that we've considered in our feasibility study, since we're like 50% locked into this in terms of, funding any future maintenance.
So I guess that's a two-part question.
It
I
is.
don't want to answer for the district.
Yep.
But my thought would be it wouldn't be in your feasibility study because the township owns the bridge, right? That's
Okay.
a township asset. What we did learn was that we have addressed everything that had to be addressed in the short term. We do know that there may be issues with the roof in the future, like any other roof. We did have it inspected. It was fine. But so what we'll do is at one point, we'll re-engage someone to go in. We're not so concerned structurally because we did take care of a lot of these things, but we will engage somebody at some point in the future to look specifically at the roof, because that's one thing we didn't work on because it didn't need any work. And The issue with structural inspections, they can get very expensive. So we did one where they were able to address things that they could see readily. And once we got into it a little more, part of that was that change order. But we would also engage that, you know, like I say, based on the feasibility study and the work we did, we think we're fine for the short term. Now, does that mean that additional pointing to all that masonry might not come up in the next few years? Absolutely, it could. Could there be issues with the roof if for some reason? So we will look at that. And I will tell you, we will make sure, I will make sure that the school district is in on the bottom floor, so to speak, when we start looking at these things. And I'll inform, Mr. Batchelor, hey, we're going to put out a contract to do this. It's X dollars. Here's what we're looking at. Here's what we found. We don't think we need to do anything in year 1 and 2, but in year 3, yes.
And you beat me to the punch because that's kind of where I was going.
Yes. So I will make sure that the district is involved early and often in moving forward. To probably the wrong time to use that phrase, but absolutely. And, that's not to say that for some reason the roof starts leaking. We'll address that when it comes, whether it be through a repair. But we look at things big picture. So if I get a report that the roof's leaking and I go look at it, I will do the analysis to say, okay, is it more cost effective to affect these XYZ repairs, or is it time to redo the roof? What can we do? The goal would be to do things so that both entities have the ability to budget for them in their next budget year. Unfortunately, as you guys know more than me, facilities always don't follow that rule. Things don't always work out that way, but that's the way we like to approach it. And I will make sure that Mr. Dolan and Mr. Batchelor are informed right up front and early on anything.
Great, thank you. That was my main question, in which you kind of addressed the township, or you addressed our feasibility study as well.
It's
Yeah,
not to say if the district wants to do a feasibility study, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Well, we are in the and it's good, we're in the midst of a feasibility study. And actually, I was meeting with Steve Behrens and Mr. Dolan this morning, and to discuss, our next steps, and we'll be discussing that at facilities next week and also in November. And one of the things we shared with our architect who's conducting the feasibility study, the acknowledgement of all the different assets that we have and the obligations we have. So while we don't own the bridge, we are bound by this tri-party agreement. And as Mr. Norsini said, as Steve shared, that, the 50% of the, costs for the upkeep of that bridge. So as we look at, our long-term pieces, our Steve is going to at least mention that so that we make sure that our feasibility study is at least acknowledging. It might not have a lot of detail about some of those specifics, but that's going to be important for us as a district. And I just wanted to thank Steve for there was a lot of comments and discussions over the last year, and the opportunity to plan, and I really appreciated his willingness to bring the district in on the ground floor when if there's future issues with it. Thank you. And I also Bradley asked what's the administrative position on this, and I would say that the administrative position is we should uphold and follow the agreements we've made. And if we've made agreements, we should, do our part to uphold them. I think the challenge that I would say to the board and all these different agreements, and just for me administratively and to our school board, and I would say the township as well, and this is some of the conversations I've had with the township over the last year or 2 years, has been there's a lot of agreements that have been made over a lot of different things that was made by people who are no longer sitting in any of the chairs. So there's and we're all bound by these agreements that were made previous to our time. And I think that's fair to say on the township side and on the school board and the school district side. And I think that is something that still needs further discussion. and still need something that we as a school board need to look at and understand and work with our township. And, these agreements that were created in multiple different areas, dealing with whether it's Sulpizio, dealing with Emmett Field, North Wayne Field, these different agreements, were all made, I think, to benefit our community. And that's what we all want to see happen. And we all have the best interest of our community. But at the same time, those arrangements and those agreements that were made, I think have presented some challenges on both sides. I would say I'll speak for the school district, but I think I could fairly say for the township as well. And so that's something that we're going to want to continue to, look at as we move forward. So does that answer, Bradley, your question on where the administration is with it? Yes,
that is helpful. And I didn't have a lot of technical questions because I tried to study up on this leading up to the meeting, so as not to take a lot of time. I guess the only other question, Mr. Batchelor, and I won't ask Mr. Norsini to commit the township to this one way or another, but the timing of this is hard. This is a challenging time for a big expenditure like this, given what we are facing with the COVID-19 crisis and the extra costs associated with bringing students back to school in person. And so, Mr. Batchelor, I guess the question would be, is there value in continuing conversations with the township about whether this is something we pay immediately? I know it's been out there for a while. I know the bridge repair happened a couple of years ago. I have kids at Radnor Elementary. I use that bridge. So I know this has been out there some time, but is there value in exploring whether this is an expenditure that has to be paid immediately or can be deferred or paid off in installments? I don't know if the township would be interested in those discussions, but if Mr. Batchelor, if you think that would benefit the district, I'd like to hear that. If you think it's not worth pursuing that, that's obviously helpful to hear too.
No, I think it might be worth considering. I think that there was some new information tonight with, just additional costs that are out there as well. So I think, Mrs. Dunn, Sarah said it well, you have one thing in your mind and then all of a sudden, as we're budgeting and planning, there's a little bit of a shift. And, so I don't, I have no problem, talking to the township about that. And the township has really been, very flexible with the district and understanding that, this was an unbudgeted cost, and to this point has been very understanding about that, moving forward. So I think that's something we could still look into and discuss. One other thing I just want to mention too, before we just change the subject for a moment, that I didn't want to forget to share, is that, about 2 years ago, the work was completed. I think this bill arrived last November, about a year ago, when the work was completed. When the work was going on 2 years ago, we were satisfied as a district, though. We did spend a lot of time talking with Steve and others about what is the condition of the bridge and, the lead paint and all of that. And Mark Brooks, our operations director at the time, did spend a lot of time. And Mr. Norsini provided for us the test results and the backup to support the challenges with that bridge. So I think from an operations standpoint, we were satisfied that, the work needed to be done and that there was problems with what type of work had to be done because of what was, some of the materials that was being dealt with. So I wanted to thank the township for that. I think going back, Bradley, to your point, yes, I'd be happy to. If that's something the committee feel, would like me to look into, I'm not going to put Steve on the spot. He doesn't have to speak to the township on that aspect, but if this committee would like me to reach out to the township to look at that aspect, that's something we certainly could do administratively.
So before anybody says, I had a question related to that for Michelle, and that is, given that this is a capital improvement, is this money we can take from our capital projects fund instead of from our general fund?
So to answer your question, Sarah, yes, you can. However, we haven't really had an opportunity to go over the capital projects fund, Fund 32, to identify the projects that we still may have to do. It is definitely an unbudgeted expenditure. In the general fund, we have designated fund balances for specific purposes. My recommendation for this $284,000 is that we would take money from that general fund balance that's been set aside for capital projects and move it over to Fund 32 to do a transfer. By doing that, we won't have any negative impact on our charter school tuition because those dollars will be backed out when we do the calculation. I wanted to make sure that however we pay for this unbudgeted expenditure, that it doesn't have a negative impact on some of those other expenses. But Bradley makes a good point. As an unbudgeted expenditure, we've had several $1 million worth of COVID-related expenses, and those continue to come in. So if it's something that the committee wants us to pursue, Kent and I are happy to go back and talk to the township to see if it's something they would be willing to do. But again, I'm sure they've paid out these dollars and are anxious to try and get them back, recovered. But perhaps maybe the additional expenses are something that waits until our next fiscal year, which would be July of 2021.
That was kind of the split the baby I was going to suggest. I feel like, whatever happened in the past, the township has paid these bills and they are waiting for us to honor our side of the contract. And I would like to be, done with the bill that we got from them last October, it's dated October 30th, almost a year ago. And I feel like, in order to preserve the goodwill we've been building over the last year or so, 6-8 months, it would be beneficial to just pay this piece. I think we knew going into the school year it would be there, and we didn't budget for it for other reasons, but I think I would prefer to pay this piece.
So
But I'm just one board member.
Bradley, do you have,
Thank you. I think and I think the district and the township's relationship has really has really picked up a lot over the last half year or so. Very much appreciate. I understand what the district's going through. If you do want to entertain paying the construction portion, that'd be fantastic. If that's the way you go, then I would provide the other information for that $86,000. And Ms. Dunn, you're correct. The township did put this money out. We've paid all these bills. That would be fantastic. I understand if you want to look at other options. So I leave that to you folks in whichever way you want to go.
okay, Bradley, do you have more questions?
No, that was my only question. Thank you, Mrs.
Okay, all right. Steve, I just have a couple of quick questions for you. One is, Ken mentioned it. Part of the extreme expense for this thing, it was lead remediation. I'm assuming that what's back on there is not lead, so we shouldn't expect that scope of expense, even 20 years from now, if the bridge needs to be painted again, we shouldn't be going back through that again, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's good to know. Is it unusual, typical, not typical, to have only gotten one responsible bidder in having put this out to bid?
That's a great question. So sometimes the bidding climate, and I see Todd, I see a name, I don't see Todd's face, but I know he was involved in the facilities for a while. I've been doing public and private bidding for 30 years. And at times there is just no rhyme to reason to the bidding climate. We were very fortunate that the contractor we got did a great job. The references checked out. So we do a thorough reference check, aside from all the financial requirements, the bank statements and the bonds. I don't know why only one bid it. We talked with our engineering firm, and we thought that would be the price is roughly the prevailing what it would cost to do. I don't know why. It could be that folks are busy. There can be something that a bidder doesn't like about a project and says, I'll bid another. I used to be an estimator, and we're probably an odd bunch, because there's times when you view a project and you say, I'm not going to bid that one. I have a better chance to make more money on another one. So but there's a host of reasons, and I can't tell you exactly why.
Okay, and then the final question I had is the feasibility study. I think you mentioned it was about 30,000.
Roughly in there, yeah.
Was that just for the bridge, or was that feasibility study for a host of things and the bridge was just one component?
No, that was and I have the Gannett Fleming numbers here, but what I need to get, I don't have the breakdown in front of me, what exactly everything costs. So I'm using round numbers. It may have been less than that,
Okay.
but that is for this report solely for the bridge.
Okay.
And
mean,
out of the $86,000 for Gannett Fleming, I'll provide the district with the exact breakdown of what each one was. I may be off by an order of magnitude just going from memory.
Okay.
So I'm seeing the financials that show me the numbers, but not the associations.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So I'm going to need a recommendation from the committee. I tend to agree with Sarah. I mean, she and I both know that as challenging as this conversation was a couple of years ago, and it was challenging, I prefer to look at this as lessons learned. Our lines of communication between the township and the school district are really improved. We've successfully created the TAP Trail agreement. I think we had an opportunity to learn here the importance of communication early in the process. Steve, you referenced it. I think it went straight to addressing what was on Nancy's mind. You know, we will all serve, both entities will serve our taxpayers the best and maintain our properties in the most cost-effective manner when there's a good communication relationship. The fact of the matter is that we have some agreements. They were done with the intention of benefiting the overall taxpayer, the overall community. And regardless of who the board is, I personally believe we all have, as stewards, have a responsibility to interact with one another in a way that provides the most value for our taxpayers. And I know this bridge was, you know, I've lived here long enough to know this bridge was an integral and really an essential component in getting Radnor Elementary School opened. However much it's utilized now or isn't or was, and these were all the conversations from a few years ago. Fact of the matter is, it does provide a pathway. It is important. It did need to be maintained. And, you know, I believe it's important for us to live by the agreements that we have. That being said, although it wasn't budgeted for in the sense of our budget, the district has known and been aware of about, you know, $280,000, $300,000 for a year. I mean, we've known that. I personally feel comfortable as a committee recommending that we pay that portion of the bill. The additional $86,000 tonight is the amount is a surprise to us. Conceptually, we knew there would be additional bills. We'll need a little bit of time to digest that. We'll have to have our business manager and the administration take a look at, you know, obviously review the bills and talk about the most responsible way for us to pay that. But I also know the township is in a tough position right now. And the fact of the matter is, in our capital fund, you know, thank you, Michelle. You've come up with a really efficient and you know, from our perspective, the most cost-effective way for us to pay this that has the, you know, that is the most beneficial to the taxpayers on the school district side. But I agree with Sarah. I believe we should, you know, recommend paying the $284 and change that this current bill is, and, you know, we can take the rest of it and work forward and move forward at another time. We may have to defer that to the next tax year, but I think this will make a difference for the township right now at a time when they need it. That's just, you know, that's just how things are. So Bradley, I really respect the idea of progress payments. That may be a conversation we should have about the balance. I would like to ask the committee to consider recommending this, you know, to authorize this payment and recommend that to the board. Is that something?
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Stern, but we could authorize that expenditure, and then it could be up to the administrators involved to, you know, talk with the township about timing and things like that. But we are authorizing this expenditure. If it goes to the full board and the full board approves it, they can pay it immediately or talk with the township as they see fit. Is that a fair characterization?
I think so. We will authorize. We'll make a recommendation as a board to authorize the payment of the $284. Michelle, the exact number is not on the committee agenda, but you would have that on the board agenda. It's just not written in there, so I keep saying 284, and it's probably some slightly different number.
It's $284,165.64.
Great. Okay.
Ms. Stern, can I just add? So I just you know, I got those numbers on the other item today, which I shared with Michelle. So I don't think the township had any thought that amount would be approved without providing you all the backup and all that good stuff. It was just, in speaking to Michelle, I said, hey, I need to let you know, this is that other portion, but it's very much appreciated that you're entertaining the construction amount tonight. And we thank you very much for that.
No, I appreciate that. I think the only piece that we're a little taken aback is, you know, Steve, it's another 30% of the cost. And so again, I think in our minds, Sarah and I both having been on the board, we've had this $300,000 number in our head, and, you know, we'll all work it out. We'll sift through that. But just in consideration of the time, Nancy and Bradley, do you feel comfortable recommending that along with Sarah and me tonight? Authorizing that recommendation to the board?
I do for the 284, and
Great.
then put it up to the administration for timing, and then the 86,000. You know, I kind of like the idea that Bradley proposed, but we can pursue that or discuss that further at our next meeting.
Well, that will come up at a later time on another agenda. Right now, all we were prepared to authorize is the amount that was on the paperwork we received this weekend. Okay, great. So we'll move that on to the full board. Steve, thank you for being here. I do appreciate.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for recommending payment on this. It is greatly apprecited. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Good night.
Thanks,
Take care.
Steve. Have a good night.
Okay, great. So I'm just noticing the time. We're going to move right into item 4.3, PlanCon Part H, which is project financing from Wayne Elementary School. Michelle, can you just give us a quick overview here and 2 items of it? I think this is really just kind of a theoretical thing because I don't know that the reimbursements are coming through right now. But if they were to come through, what amount of money would we potentially qualify for here?
So I won't actually be able to tell you the amount of money that we qualify for until PlanCon J is completed.
Okay.
PlanCon H is the financing component. This was a cash project, so we've already paid everything out. When you look at the PlanCon H document, there's just one number, and what you need to keep in mind is that in order to see all the breakdown of the costs for this project as they were bid, you need to go back and look at PlanCon Part G for this project. So PlanCon Part G, the construction was just slightly over $6.6 million. So the difference between the 7.2 and the $6 million is a variety of other things that were paid for over multiple fiscal years because it is a cash project. It would include things like survey fees, architectural fees, print drawings, all of those other things that come into play when you're doing a project, not just the construction. So this is just a formality. It allows us to be able to apply for our plan to complete our PlanCon Part J. And PlanCon Part J is when you actually do an accounting of all the expenses that were incurred. PlanCon Part G and PlanCon Part H do not include any change orders. PlanCon Part J will. After that, PlanCon is completed. PDE will tell us what the reimbursable percentage is on that cash amount that was paid out. And then they will I will actually apply with our Form 2071, which allows us to get reimbursed. That's quite a ways down the road. That probably won't happen until sometime in 2021. But it does put us in line to have this payment provided to the district. PlanCon projects are on hold right now. So that means that if you are trying to do a new PlanCon project and you haven't, or you're trying to do a renovation to existing PlanCon approved building, that those things are put on hold. The PlanCon construction process for the renovations at Wayne started well before that was actually put on hold. So this is an approved PlanCon project. We're able to complete the various PlanCon documents and we will get reimbursed. It will not be held.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about that? Good.
Susan, you're muted.
We can't hear you.
You're muted, and then your volume was very low.
There, is that better?
A little
No.
bit, still not great.
Okay. So
Still can't, you're very muffled. No.
No, it should be better now.
There it is.
Hey, we got you.
I'm gonna move in just a moment here. Okay, so then we're gonna move into item 4.4, county interim tax bills. Michelle, if you want to just give an update about that. There's not anything for us to vote on. You're just giving us information, right?
So due to the countywide reassessment, the district was recently notified that Delaware County would no longer be providing interim assessment reports to the district. And that those interim reports would not be coming to the district until January of 2021. You probably all recall that an interim tax bill is generated when someone does an addition on their house or some improvements. Their home gets reassessed. The district gets notified that there's been a change in the assessment, and we send the homeowner an interim tax bill, which would not necessarily be for the whole year. Let's say that those assessment changes went into effect on September 1st. We would send them an interim tax bill for September 1 through June 30th. And what that's going to do is that's going to negatively impact the amount of interim revenue that we receive. We used to get those interim reports on a monthly basis. The last one we received was in September. It was on September 4th, and it was only through June 1st of 2020. So I just wanted everyone to be aware that the reports we get in January will likely be for things that occurred after the countywide reassessment. So they'll go back to what they haven't actually done appraisals on, and that will be July. So it's going to take a while for them to get caught up, because right now they're concentrating on the countywide reassessment and making sure that everybody who's filed an appeal, that gets done by October 31st, and so that they can get the certified numbers to the township and the district around mid-November, or mid-November.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. Sorry, I had to move. We've put the grandchild to bed, so it's time to move. All right, great. Thank you for that update then. And then our next item is the audit update. Now, if you could give us an update on the audit.
So I'm just going to give you an overview. We're still trying to finalize all the work papers. Penny's been working diligently with the auditors as well as myself to try and get everything completed. Right now, it looks as if we're going to have a net income or a surplus of just around $2,263,000. Our revenues came in very comparable to what we thought they would come in at. Where we're seeing on the expense side, where we didn't spend the expenses, is in some areas of salaries and also in benefits for Social Security and retirement. Excuse me. We had anticipated doing multiple in-service trainings during the day with our teachers, bring the teachers in and do in-service training and provide substitutes. And a lot of that training was going to happen after the pandemic hit. So we weren't able to actually do all of those things. So we had some areas of surplus there. We also had some areas where we didn't spend funds on things that we had anticipated doing. For example, the business office was planning on updating our GASB document that values what all of our employee benefits are worth to all of our employees. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we weren't able to do that. That actually got postponed. So there's been a couple of things that we know of, specifically the salaries and the benefits for the in-service training and some other after-school things that we were planning on doing that we weren't able to do. And then also some of those other professional services that were not able to take place because of the closure.
Okay. So
I expect that the draft statements will be presented in November, and then we'll talk about the reallocation of the fund balance and the other things that we need to do to complete the audit with board approval. If we can get it done in November, that would be great. If not, it'll be December.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? No?
Just really quickly, that Michelle, and I apologize, this might just be something I don't remember from time. I feel like we're kind of late. I feel like the audit usually was done in October. Is that just with everything else that's going on? I don't mean that as a criticism. I'm just trying to keep in my head where we usually do things.
So normally it's done in November or December.
Okay.
depending on how the audit, when our auditors can come in and, where we fall in the audit cycle. We usually try to have them come in and do their preliminary work in June and part of July and have them finish everything up by the end of September. So getting the audit draft statements out and out to the board for approval in October is really difficult. October really is the month that we concentrate on finalizing all of the work papers and filing our annual financial report with PDE, which is due October 31st.
Okay, thank you. I must misremember, so I appreciate the clarification.
Great. Anything else? Do we have any new business?
I do not have any new business.
Great. Mr. Batchelor, is there any additional public comment?
Nope, no additional public comment tonight.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We will see you at the board meeting. Our meeting's adjourned.